And for anyone who's been struggling addiction or knows somebody who is, they come to the right place when they look for any kind of recovery roadmap, because our best thinking gets us into the worst situations. And addiction is doing the same thing over and over again that doesn't work. So you really need a roadmap. And this skyscraper of consciousness is a journey upwards. It's a way for everybody now to actually pinpoint exactly where they are in terms of their addiction and map out the recovery process from there. So there's no more getting lost. There's no more drifting away into distraction and denial. We get to know where we are, and where focus goes, energy flows, and we want to flow upwards. We want to flow into doing things that work for ourselves rather than harming ourselves. So the skyscraper of consciousness is an addiction recovery model that we've used successfully for many, many years. And it helps people, it just helps them to be grounded and go, oh, crap, there's no way out. This is exactly where I am, exactly where I've been. And without this model, I know exactly where I'm going. So it's an interesting concept, this skyscraper of addiction recovery. Imagine you're climbing through a towering skyscraper. The basement levels are the first floors. So there's 100 floors in the building, and the basement is levels 1 to 20. That's where we find the first level, which is our survival zone. And it's an interesting place. This is where addiction often takes hold. Think of it as being trapped in a cycle of primal survival responses. In these early floors, you might experience raw, unfiltered emotions like terror, rage, despair, hopelessness. You're operating in fight, flight, or freeze mode, that's for sure. You might identify with the victim or the addict archetype, depending on how you think, what your language is. Shame, guilt, and repressed trauma surface at this level, which is okay. It's good to be aware of these things rather than unaware, unconscious. At this level, you're blaming others, experiencing sort of constant anxiety and struggling with obsessive thoughts. Now, all our problems start with obsessive thoughts. The minute the mind goes too fast, we are into a cycle that's going to end in that shame and despair. So this is a tough place to be, but it's the first step in understanding any kind of recovery journey. So you begin to climb these levels, there is a way out and a way through. And we then enter the reactive zone, levels 21 to 40. So you begin to climb up, you hit a reactive zone and start moving beyond the survival, but you're still reacting to the world around you, still full of blame and so on. You might experience here emotional instability, seeking validation from others. That's the codependence mask that we all have. And you might be even driven by perfectionism. So it just depends on how you're wired. And we need to rewire and refire everything when it comes to addiction recovery. So power struggles and manipulations are common. But here, something interesting happens. A glimmer of awakening already begins. You start to question, very important, your limiting beliefs. So you might find yourself on an emotional roller coaster, but this awakening glimmer, as we call it, that traps you in the perfectionist prison is a key. It's a way out, and you can feel it. You visualize it and you hold it in your hand. So you start to question, you start to introspect, you start to go within, which is a spiritual solution. So it's a crucial turning point already at this lower level. Then next, we're moving to the midfields, giving you a very brief overview from the Paradigm Process book here. But it's an awakening and empowerment zone. And it gets even more interesting here. And people really begin to shift in consciousness. They begin to gain clarity about their values and their purpose that's been missing. They embrace very important vulnerability and start to actually forgive themselves and then others. So here they're starting to let go of control and develop deep self-love. Very, very important. You cannot reward yourself if there's no self-love. You cannot, start self-loving when you're self-harming. So we need to become aware that this is happening, and creativity and self-expression start to flourish when we move out of the survival mind into the thrive mind, which is, in the front of your brain, the very opposite place that addiction resides, which is in the doldrums of your brain, in your brainstem. Next, we move up and start showing more positive emotions, and archetypes like seeker and healer, which is in all of us, start to come up. You start taking responsibility for your actions. You set healthy boundaries and start practicing more and more forgiveness, discovering your own power to change your life. So autonomy starts again. Codependence lessens once more. This is where you start to rebuild your foundation. Further up, we go into the integration zone, transcending up this metaphorical skyscraper. We develop a sense of belonging, start to trust our intuition, and experience some joy, gratitude, and more unconditional love. We become more easygoing with love and less judgmental. So we're building meaningful relationships, connection. We're using intuition once again, and love. That power of love can never be underestimated. And of course, we go up floors 80 to 100, which is what we call the Transcendence zone. And this is where real recovery actually begins. This isn't a process, by the way, that you do once. You do it several times, and the book will explain it to you. But this Transcendence zone is like a recovery zone. It represents the highest levels of consciousness that you have and that you can access. You move from being just 5 sensory, sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste, which just isn't enough to navigate life without going insane. And you start to experience what we call I7X, which is a fancy kind of scientific term for being extrasensory, intuition, using your imagination as you do picturing this tower, being able to practice non-judgmental observation, even when the body's telling you to still be judgmental, and the personality masks of judgment are keeping you in rage and keeping you in despair. So this higher level is really, really interesting once again. And it's the transition to the penthouse levels. I mean, here we can experience some tranquility finally, some wisdom, and basically a profound sense of gratitude. You're practicing the self-love, you're practicing the courage, you're practicing your recovery principles, and you're really, really getting there. And that's the road through, in a nutshell. It takes, of course, a book to explain it, but you really, really can get there in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. And that's what the science tells us. We've looked at 50,000 papers and 500,000 research examples of mindfulness, meditation, this conscious awareness in recovery, this going from 0 consciousness to 1,000 joules of consciousness as we measure it. So we measure, by the way, each level as you go up, and you can really track and monitor your progress, which is something very, very important that we need to do today. So if you'd like to learn more about the Skyscraper of Consciousness, get the book, listen to the podcasts, start your 42 session experience on it. And, we're here to help people access their highest potential. You don't stay stuck. You don't stay stuck. You don't stay addicted, depressed, anxious. You don't stay blind. You wake up and you transcend this skyscraper that each of us actually have to do. Recovery is possible. So keep climbing.